Welcome to a new Team CGC 9.8 video. So today I wanted to highlight a CGC 9.8 comic that I think could be one of the next 9.8s to reach the $1,000 mark. And we're talking US dollars here too. But interesting reasoning I think on this one, because normally I don't think it's the type of 9.8 that I would recommend to just kind of sail over the $1,000 mark like I'm gonna recommend. And it sort of has to do with the census, and we'll get into that information when we do a bit of an analysis here, but I did boil it down into 4 reasons why I think this one deserves to be in that $1,000 club. And even better too, I think the price is sustainable on this one. Yeah, this one, it's a classic investment grade book with a big cult of fans, and I think the trend in the 9.8 pricing is really nice. We'll get into the pricing information as well. So yeah, I do really think this one deserves to be sort of in the $1,000 club. So let's get right into the recommendation here. It's DC Comics Presents number 47. Yeah, this is the first appearance of He-Man and Skeletor in comic books. I think with this one right off the bat, you get an amazing cover. Like it has everything you'd want from kind of a first appearance cover. You get him on the cover. There's lots of colors. Superman's on the cover. Well executed. Yeah, it's by Ross Andrew and Frank Giacoia. Just absolutely killing this cover. Let's have a look on the census there. So 231 9.8s in the blue label. That is not a lot. You would think for just how big how many cult of fans of He-Man and Skeletor and the Masters of the Universe there are, you'd think thered be more than 231. I think that's a really big positive for this book. Interesting though, the 9.8 ratio, 18.6%. So of all graded copies, 18.6% of them are 9.8s. That's not too bad. That's not, extremely rare in the 9.8. And that's what I sort of alluded to in the title, saying that normally it's not the type of book I would recommend to get over $1,000, because usually all the books in the 9.8 over $1,000 are single digit 9.8 ratios. Like 8% of them are all graded copies are 9.8s. So you don't get the super low ratio on this one, but I think you really want to kind of focus on that 231 number. I sort of compare this, and I know it's out of era, but to Batman Beyond number 1. Like Batman Beyond number 1, there's like 190 in the 9.8. And, for how popular Batman Beyond is, I have always said, like, there should be like 500 or 600 of them in the 9.8 to sort of match the popularity, but for one reason or another, there's not, and that's what makes the prices kind of go up in some of these books. So with only 231 out there, that's not a lot for, I think, how big the cult of fans of He-Man and Skeletor. I feel like there's a lot of He-Man and Skeletor fans out there wanting the best first appearance in the highest grade. And yeah, so sort of the demand exceeds the supply, I think, for these CGC 9.8s for DC Comics Presents 47. Let's get into some pricing though, because the last 2 completed listings I saw on eBay, one was $900 and one was $905. So admittedly, like, one may have sold, I don't sign up for any kind of pricing thing, so one may have sold for over $1,000 at one point here, but this is one that in my experience here in the last kind of 8 to 12 months, this was going for, I remember auctions ending there, and we had made a video recommending this one as a great kind of underfollowed one, maybe like 6 months ago. During that time, this one was about, $650. Maybe if you got really lucky, you'd maybe even get it for under $600 in an auction. CGC 9.8 white pages. So the price is, I think, trending in the right direction. The last 2 have sold for right around $900. And so, yeah, it's kind of knocking on the door of 1,000. So it's not maybe a huge prediction that I think this will go over $1,000. But I think, I mentioned I think the price is sustainable. So I think that's a big key to it too. Like, yeah, I think this one can start selling around 1,000, and then it'll just, I think the trend will kind of stay intact because it is just such a classic kind of investment grade book with the cover. So let's get into those 4 reasons I mentioned. First reason is the price is trending in the right direction. Yeah, so we did go over the price there. Remember many auctions, 612, 620, they ended at around there. This is 8 to 12 months ago, let's call it now. So now they're $900. That's a good trend in price, and you want that in most investment grade comics. I think the trend is your friend kind of thing, and there's usually reasons why the comics are trending in a good direction. I think good reasons on this one. Second reason here, movie and TV show possibilities, or show possibilities. I think I'm not right on top of some of the news. There may actually be some rumors and whispers about He-Man and Skeletor getting their own show or something like that. But I think there hasn't been a huge movie that that I'm aware of that has come out yet. So a big budget kind of a He-Man Skeletor movie could be a possibility, and I think this book would do so well in that environment. Absolutely. Third reason here we mentioned, just a classic cover. Yeah, like some first appearances, it's like you wish that maybe they were on the cover looking really cool. Well, this one, they're on the cover looking really cool. Yeah, just, again, great colors, well executed cover. So yeah, that's the third reason, the classic cover. And the fourth reason, one is zero in on this sort of 1 of 231. Yeah, because, I think if you look at the 9.8, this is just a kind of an interesting, weird book on the census, because the ratio is not very low, but there's not a lot of 9.8s for, I think, the popularity of the character's first appearance. So, yeah, to sort of have a 1 of 231 collector item in the blue label, I think is a great rare item for the first appearances that you get. And it's no wonder why it's kind of knocking on the $1,000 mark. And I did already make that comparison to Batman Beyond #1. That's when I was buying Batman Beyond #1 9.8 at $400, and there was like 150 of them in the 9.8. I was like, wow, for the popularity of Batman Beyond, I'm surprised there's not like 600 of them in the 9.8. But that book came out in the late 90s during the comic book recession. There was not a lot of, comic book wasn't very popular during that time. It's like a WB Kids book, so there just is not a lot of those in the high grade, and some books end up being like that. This is kind of maybe an early 80s version of that type of book, but yeah, you get a really popular first appearance with only 231 out there in the blue label in perfect condition. Like, that's a really cool collector item, I think. All right, so DC Comics Presents. Yeah, I do recommend this one. Yeah, just a great cover, a great investment grade book, and I think the trend will probably stay intact for this one. So, right now, hopefully you get it closer to 900. But I would probably, a really nice looking one, especially in the newsstand. And there is one on eBay right now for a best offer, and it's like 1,700 or best offer. So there's clearly people trying to get over $1,000 in this. And maybe even in this environment, for the newsstand version, it would be worth it to maybe pay $1,000. Yeah, right around that $1,000 mark. So I did bring my G.I. Joe out because this is a 1982 book as well. And G.I. Joe #1, a great 9.8. They're pretty similar on the census, though. This 21% 9.8 ratio. So it's a book that I've highlighted before as, it could be a little more rare in the 9.8. But, I think a G.I. Joe #1 is maybe about $600, let's call it now. But they're similar books. They're not too rare in the 9.8, but still, really great investment grade books. But with G.I. Joe #1, there's about 600 of them, I believe it is. Maybe just under in the blue label in the 9.8. Only 231 for DC Comics Presents. So similar 9.8 ratio, but, less on the census for this DC Comics Presents. 47, the first He-Man and Skeletor, which I think will be a big positive, like Batman Beyond #1 in the 9.8. It was a big positive for that book as well. Similar, kind of the 80s version of Batman Beyond #1, as I said. But G.I. Joe #1 in the 9.8 too, even though it's not rare in the 9.8, this could be a $1,000 book given time. I think a little bit more time. If the Snake Eyes movie hits hard, it's been pushed back, but if it does really well in theater next year, maybe this one could temporarily be about $1,000. But another one that's not too rare in the 9.8 that has some high price potential. So, and DC Comics Presents 47, I think, is in a similar boat as well. But yeah, great cover, so wantable. There was one auction where I really tried to buy this, but it just, once the bidding starts to get over like 550, I was like, oh, okay, I'm not going to get a deal, and I just didn't end up pulling the trigger. But I think I should have back then, because they were going for, yeah, again, about 600 to 650. And I think that auction that I missed out on was like, it ended right around 640 or 650. So I've tried to grab this one in the past, but just never have. But one to recommend, such an investment grade book. If you're a He-Man and Skeletor fan, like, this is the one to get, obviously. But even me being not the biggest He-Man and Skeletor fan, I'm still attracted to this book from an investment perspective, and just the great cover as well. So I think there's a lot of stuff going for this book, and I think the trend will continue, and it'll be over $1,000 soon in the US dollars, of course. All right, thanks so much for watching today. If you haven't already, I would invite you to join the team and subscribe to Team CGC 9.8. Yeah, hit the bell for all the latest video notifications, and add me on Instagram and Twitter as well. All right, yeah, glad I really thought about recommending this book, you know, just because it stands out so much with the great cover. And of course, you get those first appearances, and it is an expensive book, but yeah, me not even being much of a fan of He-Man and Skeletor growing up, but wanting this book, you know, I think that means like there's going to be other collectors sort of gravitating to this book on top of the He-Man and Skeletor huge niche that's already out there. So, and again, with only 231 9.8s, I think it sets up pretty well for this book over the long term in the 9.8 as like a great investment grade book. All right, thanks for watching, and yeah, I really appreciate all the support and for watching, and all the comments as well. Message me on Instagram if you wanted to ask me a question. Probably the easiest way to get a hold of me. But yeah, loving all the conversations I'm having on Instagram. All right, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.